Hello everyone, Kate Hay here. Today we're going to go over our adjective clauses with object relative pronouns or when and where. So far we've learned about adjective clauses with subject relative pronouns, and those relative pronouns were who, which, that, and whose. And today we're going to add a few because we're going to learn those object relative pronouns. So let's have a look how it works. So in this kind of explanation, you will see that on the left, in those sentences, you will have the main clause. Now here on the right, you will have an adjective clause. So basically, in each sentence, if we divide this sentence into two, we could have two simple sentences. I'll show you this example here. So in the first sentence, he read the book that she wrote, right? If we divide the sentence into two, I could say he read the book, she wrote that book, right? So we use that second sentence, she wrote the book, to describe that book in the first sentence. And the way we did this, remember that adjective clauses always describe the noun. So we use the second sentence to do it. We basically took that object, and because this object was the book, we got rid of the book and we used one of those relative pronouns, because this is how we make adjective clauses. We use relative pronouns to create an adjective clause. And because the book is a thing, so it's either that or which that we can use, and then we follow the sentence the way that it was. We don't repeat that object here because this object now is here. See, that's why we call it object relative pronoun, because it is the object of this adjective clause. And how do I know that this is the object? Remember that it's the book, right? We're talking about. So this means the book. She wrote what? She wrote the book. Subject, verb, object. So because we use that object here, now we can call it the object relative pronoun, not the subject relative pronoun, because we already have the subject here. This has to be the object. If you look at the second sentence, she is someone whom I respect. Again, if I want to divide the sentence into two, I would say she is someone, period. I respect that someone, right? But in this case, we took that someone, right, that we have already here, and we switched it to whom. Because again, we need a relative pronoun. So now we have, she is someone whom I respect. And again, some students make this mistake and they say, she is someone whom I respect her. Well, we can use it because that object is already here. That's what we call the object relative pronoun, because it works as an object in this particular clause. The next one is the example of how to use whose plus noun. So we have that is the author, whose book I read. Again, if we want to divide this sentence into two, we would say that is the author, period. I read his book. So whose book did I read? The author. And because we have the author already in the first sentence, we're going to use this to describe whose book I read. So I'm going to use, I read his book, and I'm going to move this now here to describe the author. But I can't write his book in here because his is not a relative pronoun. We learned that relative pronouns are that, which, who, and whose, right? That's why every time we see a possessive adjective like who, her, or his, we're going to use whose instead. So whose book I read will be a perfect adjective clause to describe this author here. Now, you already learned that for object relative pronouns, we added whom in here, right? So this is our additional relative pronoun for the object relative pronouns. But today I'm going to show you that we also can use where and when, but these are only object relative pronouns. So please remember that because so far we learned only the subject relative pronouns, and there's no more of them, only the ones that you learned. So where and when, if you see them, they have to be the object relative pronouns. Always remember that once you have the subject here before the verb, these have to be called object because we already have the subject in our adjective clause here. So these will be called the object relative pronouns. Let's have a look at the first sentence here. She loves the city. Okay, the second sentence normally would say she grew up in that city, right? So where did she grow up? In that city. Because the first sentence tells us about the city, we're going to use where, right, to describe the city, and then we're going to follow with the rest of the sentence. She grew up. So again, where replaces in that city in the second sentence. She grew up in that city. We're going to get rid of in that city and replace it with the word where. Okay, to create this beautiful adjective clause that describes the noun in front of it. Now, the second one says they cried the day when they left. So when talks about the time, where talks about the place, when will talk about the time. So they cried the day, right? Someday, okay? They left that day, okay? So they cried the day when they left. So basically they left that day. We're going to get rid of that day because we already have it here. And instead we're going to replace it with a relative pronoun of when. And that's how we create a new adjective clause with an object relative pronoun when. I have one more page here that I wanted to explain really quick to you. And this page shows us how we can add an adjective clause inside the main clause, basically, right? So in the first one, we learned how to add an adjective clause after the main clause, but this one will show us how to do it in the middle of the main clause. Now, remember, you should never decide on where you want to put that adjective clause. Your decision needs to be based on where is the noun in the main clause that you want to describe. If that noun, look, is at the end of the main clause, then you need to add that adjective clause after the noun. But if the noun is somewhere in the middle or at the beginning of the main clause, you need to add this adjective clause right after the noun that you're describing. So that should be the reason for your decision. So let's have a look at the first sentence. The book, if you look at the main clause, the book is great, okay? And this clause in the middle, the adjective clause, was created by the sentence, I read that book, right? So which book did you read? So the book that or which I read is great. Okay, so we added this adjective clause to describe the book in the main sentence, in the main clause. Again, the next sentence says, someone was there. Okay, that's our main clause, that's our main sentence. But then, you know someone, right? We had another sentence that we added here, you know someone. So because we already have someone in the first clause, we're going to use, remember, to describe that noun, we always start our adjective clause with some sort of relative pronoun. So because someone is a person, we have to use whom, and then we follow the rest of the sentence from the previous sentence. You know someone, right? Whom you know. And that's how we created someone whom you know was there. Okay. How do we use the whose plus noun? We have the man writes books, okay? You know his sister. That's another sentence that we had. So to use you know his sister, we used the sentence to create this pronoun. His sister was replaced with whose sister, and then we followed the sentence the way it was. You know, right? Okay, and the last one here is with where and when. Same thing. We had the first sentence, the library has videos. and the library is a place. So I work at the library, right? Was our original sentence number 2. So if I want to describe that library, I'm going to say the library where I work has videos. Okay, so I split the first sentence so that I could add my adjective clause and describe that noun library. Summer is a time, so we have to use when with that, but look at the original sentence. The summer passed slowly, and the second sentence said she left that summer. So in order to describe that summer, right, we're going to say the summer, and then we're going to use that object and create an object relative pronoun because it talks about the time. We're going to use when, not whom, not whose, not which or that. We're going to use when, and we're going to follow the rest of the sentence the way it was. So the correct sentence at the end will be the summer, when she left, passed slowly. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any questions.